You are listening to the Backstage Pass podcast, hosted by Hannah Trigwell and brought to you by Thomann.
Hello, Rob and Ollie. How are you?
Great, thank you.
And we've smashed down quite a lot of caffeine in the last half hour, Hannah, in preparation for this chat. So there might be some quite garbled messages coming your way, just to warn you.
Yeah. Nice. So I know you best, Rob, for being manager of Marsicans, the band, and Ollie, you play guitar in Marsicans.
Yep, that's right.
How is that experience for both of you?
Well, it's been about 5 years, is it, since you officially properly started getting involved?
I think it's actually 6 this summer, you know.
Yeah. Every year that goes by, we take a year off.
Yeah.
That's generally the rule.
So how have you found the whole releasing through a label experience as opposed to self-releasing?
You guys have put a few things kind of on Bandcamp, haven't you?
Yep.
And then
and SoundCloud.
And then we had a bunch of recordings that we did. One as a self-release, like just Marsicans, like a kind of EP, 4 tracks. And then we did another EP on a kind of vanity label that was still us, but we just called it something. And that did all right in terms of we got a few things on Radio 1 and we got some sort of playlists on Spotify and all that sort of stuff. And that was enough to... Yeah, no, it was great at the time, really exciting. And it was enough to get us at least some interest on the indie label front. So we kind of worked with a label from Manchester called Lab. And we ended up doing 8 singles with them. And then we felt like, God, we put out 15 songs now or something like that. It is, are we going to just keep releasing singles? Or, we all want an album under our belt here. So you guys basically went away and just worked on that for a year while we were releasing with Lab. But it was always the thought that we were going to feel like I'm talking too much.
No, we were sort of like we were 4 singles in with Lab, and we were sort of thinking like, what would we do? What we're doing next? And we sort of just ended up releasing more singles just through having to keep putting stuff out. We kind of felt that like until we get an album out, we don't really belong with that scene of like album bands.
I've got a question for you. I think that's a good point, but do you think music fans see it like that, or do you think it's more artists see it like that, or music press? Like, do you think?
I think
it's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah,
I get the feeling like our younger fan base aren't as bothered about an album. They just like songs coming out every month. I think your older fan base certainly enjoy the experience of an album more, and the freedom to just like put different styles of songs out there, stuff that isn't seen as a single. But then what we were actually seeing is a lot more people, or maybe we were just more conscious of it, that people were just asking when the album is coming out, and then we were just thinking like, well, when is the album coming out? If no one's going to give us the money up front, we're just going to have to go and record our own album and stop waiting around for like some magic deal to land in the inbox or something.
Yeah, I think that's what I was feeling when I did mine. I was just like, it just got to the point where I was like, well, am I going to do it or not? Because it has to be a decision that you follow through, doesn't it? As opposed to a pipeline dream.
Yeah.
If you sign to a label and they're like, where's the album? Go make the album. Here's loads of money. Then obviously it's different. But
well, I think there was always a fear that, especially now that people were asking where the album was, that we carried on pumping out singles. It was, instead of looking like we were on the climb, it was looking like, I think we've always had that in the back of our mind, like we need to keep pushing and keeping things new and fresh as far as we can. A finished product was handed to the label, but one that they'd heard part of.
That was, I think we're all happy actually that we were in that position to go and record the album how we wanted to do it. And there was, we had a lot of discussions amongst ourselves about difference in opinion, but at least there were no one else saying like, well, that's just, that's not going to work.
And it was interesting, Hannah, because we were speaking to labels quite early in the process in the hope that someone was going to come in with a checkbook and go, here's a couple of $100,000, off you go, boys. rather than us having to fund it. But, you know, even though the discussions were going throughout the whole recording process, essentially, no one really came on board beyond the kind of talking stage, you know, like, oh, keep you posted on what's happening, you know, and people like, let me know when you're playing London, and, you know, it's just the usual kind of A&R
BS
circus, yeah.
Yeah.
But, you know, we were still in the game, and we had some very big labels that we were excited about that we were speaking to. So, you know, you're not going to write that stuff off. But it did get to a point where we'd kind of recorded everything, we'd mixed everything, and I was starting to think, like, I'm not even sure it would be a good thing at this stage if a major label came in, because just by all the horror stories we've heard, they're going to want to come in and change things and re-record things. And actually, we've kind of signed off. If they come in early in the process and we work with them, that would be something. But we've signed off on this album, and we're as happy with it as we could be. You know, I think it actually, at that point, would have been really difficult to, I mean, you know, I think if there was a fat check for us, we'd have looked at it. But I think creatively, it would have been very difficult to then pivot and, you know, have to redo stuff, because...
And, like, the check, like, the fat check element, that's only important, but not because we want to get a load of money from this. It's just because you can't afford to be, like, in a band and live off it at pre-album stage.
Yeah, you've got to eat.
So, like, the money is there just so we can actually give us something to live off, to put time into it, because, like, it's just not possible otherwise. So, you know, like, that the kind of money that comes from the majors, that's we're like, well, you know, there's a lot of stuff we don't like about how majors operate, but, you know, we need it if we want this band to, well, we're potentially going to need it, because...
Yeah, where we want to go. And obviously they've got clout in the marketing world that is very hard to, you know, it's very hard to emulate with an indie release, I think. So, you know, there's that consideration as well. Obviously, there's a trade-off there creatively, probably.
Yeah.
So
is the label now, is it indie or is it major?
Yeah, it's Killing Moon. So we signed with an indie label towards the back end of the year. They actually put together a really attractive deal, you know, in the indie sense of the word. And they had, you know, a bigger team than we'd had at Lab. So that felt like a move in the right direction, but we still kept creative control over the output. And, you know, so it felt, you know, we were happy to sign it, and relieved a little bit, because, you know, it's like, God, we got the album now. Like, are we putting this out ourselves, or, you know, what's happening?
Yeah.
So. And also, like, all the singles that we sort of identified as the strongest tracks in the album, actually, the plan they put together was the same tracks that we thought were the strongest ones. So we felt like
amazing.
They were kind of coming in from the same angle.
Yeah, because I remember you sending the to like a select group of people the tracks out with a kind of voting system of how you felt.
That's right. I forgot you were the artist on that. Yeah.
Oh, was I?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. I always wondered how my scores met up against.
You know what? We'll have a look at
people's.
that. We'll have a look at that after this.
Because that would be really interesting. It's probably completely opposite.
It was really surprising, that whole process, though. It was good for us.
Was it? Yeah. Was the feedback useful for you?
Oh, massively. I think we all had ideas about which tracks were the strongest, but you know, it's really hard to listen to them with fresh ears at the end of the process, because you've been living with these songs for, well, you guys, years.
Whenever I play demos or you know, new songs to people in the industry, they're listening with a certain mentality that a listener doesn't have.
Is this a hit?
And it's just yeah. Is this a hit? Whereas, like, when you're listening to a song and it makes you feel something, and there's a hook that you like, you're not necessarily hooked on because of what the industry person thinks you will be hooked on.
Very true.
So I think about this a lot. Well, unfortunately, we've run out of time, but it's been really great to speak to you both. And I usually end with 2 questions. Obviously, take your turns in answering them. But what is your track of the week? Let's go with Ollie first. What's your track of the week?
So there's this. So Alabama Shakes.
Oh yeah.
Released. I'm a big fan of Alabama Shakes and Brittany Howard. And I know quite a lot of songs, but I came across this track the other day, which is a song called Joe, and it's live from Austin City Limits Festival.
Austin City Limits,
And this performance is just vocally, just like makes you like, whoa! You just have to stop and like it.
Wow!
Yeah, it kind of stiffens your whole body up as you listen to it. And that song, I think, is just amazing, and I listen to it most days.
The song that we put out as a single, that Marsicans put out as a single this week, is Someone Else's Touch, and it's the only sort of downbeat single we've released as a kind of album preview. But the reason I'm saying it is we had an experience during the recording, which I think mentioned earlier. We did lucky enough to do at Rockfield Studios, which is this cool residential studio with an amazing history in rural Wales. And it was one of the last nights we were there, and it was a slow song, and we kind of darkened. It was late. We darkened the studio, and James just delivered this really intimate, emotional vocal, and it weirdly affected all of us in the room. And I'm like kind of getting goosies from just like thinking about that moment. But we were all kind of, no one was looking at each other, but we all had that like lump in the throat, like, just a little bit of magic happened in the recording of that song. And, it'll be a moment that I will always remember, and I'm really grateful for. So it's great that it's been captured, in that song.
We knew that would be a big moment of the weekend. There was sort of build up to this vocal, and we're like, when's the right time to do it? And it worked out, didn't it? Like, couldn't have done it any better.
We'd all had it. We'd all had a few beers and glasses of wine by that point, but it helped. But yeah, so Marsicans, Someone Else's Touch is my track of the week. Thank you for asking.
My final question is, what is the best lesson that you've learned so far in your career?
So from the managerial standpoint, I kind of came into artist management with a lot of enthusiasm and not much experience. So there was always this kind of nagging feeling that you're a bit of a charlatan, and you don't really belong in this world because there's people that know what they're doing elsewhere. And I think I've been doing it with Marsicans 6 years, and for a few years before that with some other artists. But my lesson is that actually no one knows how to do this thing. Everyone is trying to work it out, and the playing field is constantly shifting. So you need to, one, react to that, and two, relax, because you are as good as anyone else operating, or you're at no disadvantage experience-wise. You just have to find a way that works for your artist, and there's no roadmap to that. So I think just that realization that essentially everyone else is winging it as well. So don't feel that you're at a disadvantage. So that was a lovely, slightly unsettling kind of revelation, but it gives you confidence to like, okay, well, I think this is going to work for these guys, so we're going to try that.
I think I'd say just like, as you need to kind of, I think an important thing, which has been a downfall of a lot of people I've seen, is you have to kind of be honest, like your persona or whatever it is you are portraying in music. It has to align with, a certain degree of your own personality. If you're trying too hard to have like the look and the attitude, you're probably going to get caught out at some point down the line, or you get to a point where you think, Why am I being this person? And like that's got to both online and on stage. There's got to be like a consistency with who you are or who the band is, and then I think it's going to be a lot more fun that way as well. To be yourself.
Well, good luck with the album. It's going to be great.
Thank you, Anna.
Yeah. No, cheers, Hannah. Enjoyed the chat. It was really good fun.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode. Be sure to hit subscribe and leave a comment to let us know what you think. And I will see you next time on Backstage Pass.